everyone, it's Shel C from PaperOcotilloStudio, and here is the speed up version of the live stream Art Joy of Sharing live stream channel for this Thursday. You know, every Thursday on this channel you get the speed up version of the live stream from the other channel because that's just how we roll. So today I was doing over in Art Joy of Sharing art community, which the live stream is coordinated with the art community. It all goes together. We're doing a theme called Muted Tones, and it's all about color mixing, color theory, figuring out how to neutralize colors and how to make tints and tones, tints and shades. And so today we were gel printing with that idea, that concept for hashtag AJOS muted tones for this theme for this month, March of 2022. So I decided to use a combination of acrylic paint with Pan Pastel. I wanted to have some pattern, and so I decided that my main thing I would be doing today would be this technique. I would use Pan Pastel because it is by nature kind of already muted. Pastels are a chalk. Pan Pastel is a chalk that has a little bit of binder in a little tub instead of being a stick. And it works really great on the gel plate. The gel plate attracts the powder. It's not very messy. It's a good way to use Pan Pastel to make fun prints. But that's the reason I picked it, was because I thought it would already be muted just by the nature of the product. And then I would combine that with acrylic paint, which you do. I mean, you can't really do you can't pick up a Pan Pastel print without acrylic paint to pull it off. But I would add an additional patterning layer by putting the acrylic paint down first and making some type of pattern on the plate with acrylic paint that I would then let dry. And I did this with stencils today, all different stencils from all different places. So the first thing I did was put down some acrylic paint. Then I put the stencil on top, pulled the excess paint with some scrap through the stencil, so that I'm left with a pattern when I pull the stencil off. Let that dry a little bit. And that's the reason that I'm working with 3 small plates at once, is to have drying time in between. Then I would put the Pan Pastel over the top, and I am using color theory and color mixing to make them muted. Like in the case of this one I just am pulling now, I put orange and blue together on the plate, letting them go over the top of each other and glaze over the top of each other, and that will mute those colors down because they're opposites on the color wheel, right? I guess I didn't pull it yet. Had to get some pattern on that other plate so that it would have time to dry. So you can see that neither of those are particularly bright, the colors in the background, even though they were bright colors off the palette. So then I went and picked up ghost prints, and you'll see me doing ghost prints all the way through. The Pan Pastel will give you a couple prints, but the second one is not going to have the blue paint on it anymore because I already pulled that one up, you know, the blue lattice looking thing. So it ends up having just no lattice, which then is the color of whatever paint you picked it up with. So by this third one, you'll be able to tell that blue one wasn't very good. Couldn't see much on it. So I went back with a lighter color for another print. And you'll be able to see that the pattern, the lattice pattern, now becomes the color of the paint that I'm picking it up with. Did you guys get that? So that one is a Heidi Swap stencil called Lattice with an arabesque shape. So then the next stencil I'm using is from the Crafter's Workshop, I think, and it's got these squiggles on it. You can see I've got some drawing on the right hand side of the screen, and I'm making some pattern with the same stencil. It's a 12 by 12 stencil on the left hand side, but I've got to let those dry a little bit. I guess that one's dry enough. So then I'm using some bright pink, but I'm neutralizing it with yellow green. So it's like a blue pink and a yellow green neutralizing each other on this one. with the Pan Pastel. And then I will pick it up, I think, with some of this titanium buff color, which is also kind of a nice, has muting properties of its own because it's not bright white. I do use some bright white too, and some black and some Payne's gray, different colors of paint. But mostly I'm doing the colorization with the Pan Pastel. So one thing that I am doing in between that I edited out, except for maybe one time, is the cleaning of the plate. When you use Pan Pastel, it just stays on the plate. Like no matter how many times you lift it, you still have it on there. So you can use some baby oil, just a little bit of baby oil, and wipe it off with some type of a rag, and you will clean that excess pastel off there. So I left it in for one round, I think, and then I cut it out on the rest of the editing because you don't need to see me clean the plate over and over. But I do make more than one print. So there's usually at least one print and a ghost print, sometimes two ghost prints. Like that's the third print that I made off of that one. So that is the squiggly stencil. And you do see some of the patterns coming back because I'm rotating everything out. I'm getting acrylic paint on, letting it dry, and then doing the pastel. A few of the times during this, you'll see me put some alcohol ink on as well. I got out some colors that I thought were pretty muted of alcohol ink and was playing with those too because you get kind of a watercolor effect on your prints when you use alcohol ink. It's kind of cool. So, but I didn't do it very much, so I didn't put it in the title or description or anything because I just did it a few times. So this time I used gray acrylic paint and this keyhole design stencil, which I think is a Dina Wakley stencil, and let that dry. And I'm going to move over to this squiggle paint one that I've got dried on the left-hand side this time. And here's where I'm putting in some alcohol ink. And you'll see what the effect is. The paint itself, the acrylic paint, is a light rose, so it's like kind of a baby pink color. And then I put some currant and I think some like maybe slate or something on that one and let it dry. And then here's the lattice one again, because I had that dried on that small plate. I think that's a 3x5, and then this other one's a 5x7, and then this one is a 6x6 gel plate. And sometimes I use strips of paper, my leftover strips of paper, and I make these little things that look like washi tape that I will put adhesive on the back and make them into washi tape at some point. So really what I'm doing is I'm kind of demonstrating how to use pastels to glaze over each other and neutralize the colors. That's what I was doing during this, as well as making some papers I can use for these muted tone projects that we're doing all month. So like in the case of this one, I've got some chromium green and some Payne's gray together along with this gray. There's not really much neutralizing there, though. Both those colors are pretty muted. But in the Pan Pastel, you'll get a pure artist color, like say it's sienna. You'll get a raw sienna. Then you'll get a raw sienna shade, which means they've added black to it. And you'll get a raw sienna tint, which means they've added white to it. I don't have every color of Pan Pastel, but I have quite a few. And I do have a lot that are tints or shades. So they're the lighter and the darker version of the pure artist color. You know, there is a kind of a set of artist colors that were made by pigments that are your basic ones, and then you can just blend anything from that. So that's what the keyhole design. I printed one on black paper and one on an old calendar page. And so they look a little bit lighter and darker because of the both the paint I picked them up with as well as the paper I used. So this time I didn't put any acrylic paint down. I put the stencil right down onto the plate and I put the Pan Pastel through it. This is normally what you would see with printing with Pan Pastel. You wouldn't make the dried acrylic on there first. But it is fun to do that if you want it to, it's just another technique, another way to gel print, as if there wasn't already 5 million ways to gel print. But with the same design, the leaves from TCW, I did put acrylic paint in Payne's Gray on the small plate to dry. And then I'm going to pick up this one over here. Picking it up with quinacridone gold, which is a very transparent paint. And I didn't actually like how it changed the color of the pastel. I didn't like this print very much. But, I mean, it is what it is. But you can't see that the pastel was originally green and gray. But then when I picked it up with titanium buff, it looks a lot different. My pieces of paper are just a little bit too skinny. And I end up with these edges all the time that I have to wipe down. I cut them too skinny. So here's that squiggle one with the alcohol ink. I finally decided to pull that one, I guess. And actually, even my roll-off paper is getting very interesting. It's got a lot of muted tones on it because I'm layering the paints on top of each other and stuff. So see how that kind of looks like a watercolor more than anything else? It just does. So I'm putting some Naples yellow down and getting out another stencil. This one I think is I don't know who manufactured this stencil. I'm not sure if it came blue or if it's got blue paint on it either. So those are some letters on there. And I'm moving on to this little one that has the dried Payne's Gray on there. Now, red is one of the brightest colors, right? How do you mute red? Well, you put green over it. So I put red down and then I glazed it with green. I put green over the top of it. And then those colors mix together and make a much more muted tone. So that's just neutralizing. You guys need to look at your color wheel, and if you don't have one, you should get one. I'll put a link below the video in case you haven't picked one up yet, because a color wheel has so much information on it. Even just the typing on it is extensive and will teach you a lot about color theory. So now I had pulled off a lot of that green that was on the top of the pastel, and I thought to myself, how am I going to neutralize this red that's left on here? And so what I did was I put a little bit of oregano and lettuce colored alcohol ink on it, and that muted it right down. So again, putting green with the red makes a more neutralized, muted tone. See? So that's with the leaves stencil from the Crafter's Workshop. And I guess we're moving on to, here's this Nautilus shell. That one's from DecoArt. I got out all the stencils today that I was going to use in the show, and none of them are Stencil Girl, because I know you guys are seeing a lot of Stencil Girl stencils from me, and there are other companies that make stencils. Although I am of the opinion that the designers at Stencil Girl make really great stuff for mixed media people. So I do really like Stencil Girl, and I use them a lot, and I have a lot of them for various reasons. But all the stencils I'm using today are from other companies. I decided I better do some brown. That's a muted tone on its own. Earth tones are all kind of muted on their own, right? So I put different shades of browns over this one that has the Naples yellow on the left, and picking that up with some Naples yellow. That's one of my favorite colors. Naples yellow is a neutral in my opinion, although it is yellow. it is very neutral. I think you can use it just like you use titanium buff and unbleached titanium and colors like that. So there you go. Brown. They look about the same on the black paper and the white paper in that case. And this time I'm going to pick it up with light rose, which is a light pink. Very, very light pink. Also a neutral in my opinion. So it's obviously pink, but put a little bit too much paint on there, so I left that one to dry. And that's craft colored deli paper, by the way. The papers I used are rice paper, text weight printer paper in black and white. And I did cut up a couple pieces of this craft colored deli paper. I might have used maybe another piece of deli paper. I'm not sure. Oh, and then my planner pages that I've torn up the planner from previous years, and I'm recycling those pages. So you see a lot of those. They got the numbers on them, but most of the time that's covered up. And if it's not, I don't really care. It's just another, you know, graphic design on the paper to me to have the numbers and lines and things if they don't get completely covered up. So I had some fun with that stencil that has all the jumbled letters. I'm not sure. I don't recall ever using it before, actually. And it would be fun to do it on a whole piece of 12 by 12 instead of just having that little section of it. But pretty cool stencil, a mask style stencil really in a 12 by 12. So then this stencil, I believe, was made by Carla at What If NC. It might have been designed by Cindy Utter. I have several of her designed stencils, and they're made by Carla. But the mylar on this one, I think since then she's gotten thinner mylar, but the mylar on these stencils is pretty thick. So instead of trying to brayer through it, I used a sponge dauber and put my paint through the stencil, and then I flipped it over and did the reverse print on the other plate. So if you saw the little situation with the sponge, that was what happened. So now on this one with the Nautilus shell, which is from Deco Art, I am making a muted rainbow. So I'm using the bright colors and then muting them down with their complementary color by glazing over the top, because we were talking about rainbows and that being one of the prompts from the Jelly Arts March Mania. Every day they've got a gel printing prompt. So I haven't been doing it, but Peg was doing the live stream with me, and she was doing it. So I think she did flowers and then circles and then rainbow. And I said, well, I want to make a muted tone rainbow. So I did. How about that? Not that bright, but still a rainbow, right? And then, of course, I can go back in with light paint, pick it up again for my second print, and the black won't be on there anymore. And where the black is will now be white. Or, well, actually, I think it's titanium, unbleached titanium or titanium buff. But you get the idea. So lots of fun there. Muted rainbow with a Nautilus shell. I love that stencil. I love Nautilus shells. They're really super cool. So then I am putting on some gray paint again with this another stencil from Deco Art. This one was designed by Andy Skinner, if I recall. It's like a steampunk words and numbers and things like that. If you like that type of stuff, steampunk stuff. Here's a couple of them. Going to let that dry, and I'm going to work on these other ones that are now dry. For the one on the right, I'm using alcohol ink. I think it's butterscotch, currant, maybe mushroom. You know, some colors that aren't super bright. Most of the alcohol inks are bright, but these are the ones manufactured by Ranger, and some of them are Tim Holtz colors, which means they do tend to be a little bit more distressed. And then on the left, I am using the Pan Pastels with the pattern. And I did put the bright pink down, and then I put some yellow green over the top, and then did the orange and blue together. I used that same blue in the background because it's kind of a calm blue. And then I used a darker yellow in the middle. And I thought, okay, those are muted tones, right? Because I muted them with the complementary color. But when I picked that one up, it was bright. The pink did not get enough of the yellow green on it to mute it down. So you'll see what I did. It was actually a suggestion from an audience member in the live stream. And she suggested that I just put a whole nother layer over the top of it, which I ended up doing, and it worked. So my piece of paper wasn't big enough, so I'm picking up little bits of it on another strip. See that magenta is too bright. It's not a muted tone. But the one on the right hand is very muted. Very, very muted. So then to color correct that, I used a light yellow color to pick up my ghost print, which did solve the problem on that one, as you'll see. And of course, also it's lighter anyway because it's a second print. But the color correction with the yellow did work to make that bright pink calm down. And then what I did for this other one is this is transparent white. It's transparent mixing white, so it's not a titanium white, which is opaque, and then it would just make the whole thing white. It's a see-through color. So by putting that on there, it pasteled out, it tinted everything, and now it becomes much more muted. So that solved my super bright print, my one super bright print that was not muted for hashtag AJOS muted tones. So then I came back with that same bright pink just so that I could prove that you can indeed mute that. And I put more of the yellow green color over the top of it to glaze it, and then I used a shade of turquoise. Shade means that it has black in it for the rest of it, just to make it more interesting. I don't like to just use one color. I like multiple colors. So that's with the gray acrylic paint, and then I picked up the second one with some titanium buff color, and there won't be any of the gray acrylic on that one, and it's very soft, very soft. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I've got one more stencil to do, but I wanted to tell you guys to give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment or a question if you have any questions about any of this stuff. And of course, you can subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and you know, all that stuff. You can join my channel membership if you want exclusive content coming out on the 15th. Very soon, there'll be a new exclusive real-time and speed video with technique teaching. And there's like the whole show and tell. And so that's it for me, guys. I'm out of here. Bye-bye.